trust me?
Greetings of This May Concern, Christian Aguilar here, back with another series review. However, I want to go on the limb and call this an after show for HBO's The Last of Us. I just got done watching the first episode, and right off the bat, as a fan of the games, and as a frequent HBO watcher, I grew up with HBO. I've seen a lot of their originals, and as a fan of the games and as a fan of HBO, I have to say this show flew up there in terms of my favorite HBO series. And in terms of video game adaptation, this is the best video game adaptation yet. This first episode alone beats out every single video game adaptation that has ever been attempted thus far. Granted, I haven't seen the Super Mario Brothers movie. That's going to come out later this year. But as of right now, first episode of The Last of Us, in my opinion, remember, it's all my personal opinion, beats out every single video game adaptation. Like, there's no other movie or series that's a video game adaptation that you could really put neck and neck with The Last of Us. And that's just the first episode, man. And with that very high praise, I have to say this is definitely worth your time, even if you're not a fan of the games. Thus far, it's a very faithful adaptation. What it does originally is expand on certain character moments that we've only heard of or know that happened off screen when we play the game. They allow us to spend a little bit more time with certain characters than we do in the game, and I think in terms of a series, like a television show, it's a perfect way to, one, introduce the characters and to really flesh them out. Because when we play the game, it's a very linear path that we follow when we play the game because we're in a perspective of a character, right? So we stay in that perspective to feel immersed and to feel connected with the person we're playing as, right? But with a series, we can jump to different characters. We can stay with one character a little bit longer compared to other characters. And I think that's what this show is going to utilize with its storytelling. We're going to get a lot more time with certain characters, and we're going to get certain scenes and certain relationships expanded on than in the game. And to me, that is a perfect adaptation. It's taking what's in the games. It's not trying to flip it on its head or anything. It's not trying to diverge the fans of the games. No, it's not trying to do any of that. It's paying homage, it's paying respect to where it came from, and it's building upon it. This feels like a longer version of the game, which is badass. So before I go any further in discussing the episode, I want to say, full spoiler warning, if you have not seen the first episode, I highly recommend sitting down, watching it, and just getting some enjoyment out of it, because one, you don't have to be a fan of the game to really watch this, and two, if you are a fan of the game, you'll be pleasantly surprised with this adaptation. If you're not a fan of the game, this basically is going to cover the games. So I feel like you don't really have to play the games if you don't want to, and you could just sit back, relax, and enjoy the story that the show is going to tell. I feel like it's going to tell the exact same story, but it's going to give you more substance, which is insane to say because I did not think I was going to say this about this show. So I highly recommend watching it. One episode, it's an hour and 20 something minutes, so it's kind of like a feature length movie, and that hour and 20 minutes to me flew by. It really did. So full spoiler warning, if you've seen the episode, stick around, you can hear my thoughts on it. And yeah, so without further ado, let me jump right into it. So I love how the episode starts off in the 60s, in a talk show in the 60s, and it's like showing you this program where these scientists are basically talking about the fungus infection that ends up, plaguing the world. So I love how they took this approach, and granted, I did just watch Watchmen, the movie Watchmen, earlier this morning, so that was still kind of fresh in my mind when I sat down and watched this episode. So when I saw that, it reminded me of the beginning of Watchmen, because the comedian watches a little televised program of them talking about the doomsday clock, whether or not Russia is going to send the bomb over and they're going to be in nuclear war, right? So he was watching that program, and really the movie kind of opens up with that commentary to really put you into the world. This is what's happening in this world, this is the situation, this is what's up, now let's catapult you into the story. The Last of Us does that here as well. They use this television program to kind of give you a little backstory on this world and on the infection, and I thought that was really, really sick. It set up that vibe like Chernobyl did. That also gave me a little bit of Chernobyl vibes, which makes sense because it's the same showrunner. So I absolutely love how they incorporated that as the beginning, because as as a fan of the game, we all know if we played the game, we know how that starts. It starts off with Joel and his daughter, right? And you playing as Sarah. So to start off with the television program set in the 60s, it really shows you that, yeah, right off the bat, this show is going to expand upon the game. Like, right, first and foremost, we're going to start back in the 60s. So, like, around 40 years before the actual events of the show start, you know? So that's pretty trippy to see, and I absolutely really loved how this show began. Oh, and I love that the actor that played Jonathan from the Mummy movies was the scientist that was describing the fungal infection. A huge fan of the Mummy movies, specifically the first two, and I just love Jonathan as a side character in that movie. I mean, he's the comic relief done really well in those movies. But I love how that actor came and he was incorporated into the show, and he was the scientist to explain the infection. That was pretty sick. So when we go into Sarah's scenes, I was pleasantly surprised to see that they're really expanded on. We see her at school, we see her coming home, waking up in the morning, breakfast with her dad and Uncle Tommy. So it was really cool to see that little day in the life of before everything really hit the fan, right? And when the outbreak does occur, I do love how they incorporated the neighbors. And again, in the game, the neighbors are only briefly mentioned at the beginning, and they actually come to their house, rather, like it's in their backyard that takes place. And so we never really explore the neighbor's house or anything, but the series allows us to see the neighbor's house, allows us to see the relationship that Sarah had with the neighbors. So when the outbreak actually occurs, I love how that relationship, that little dynamic, is impacted due to the outbreak. And so it was really cool to see basically patient zero, almost, you know, the old woman attacking, kind of like twitching out in the background. If you really pay attention, that was really like off-putting and really creepy, and I really enjoyed seeing that. And that led into the pickup truck scene, which is just straight out of the video game. I mean, verbatim, beat for beat, that's how it was in the game. Sarah in the back, Tommy driving, Joel in the passenger seat. They're driving in the pickup truck down the road away from their house, and then they see a family with a kid stranded on the side of the road. Tommy was like, "We gotta help him." Joel's like, "No, no, no. What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, they have a kid." He's like, "So do we. Keep driving." Straight out of the video games, and to see that recreated in the show, mwah, chef's kiss, man. Chef's kiss. That was just so sick to see in live action, because I've played it a couple of times, like many Last of Us fans. We've played the game so many times, so to see it in live action done so well, translated so beautifully, it was just perfect, man. It's just what you want to see, man. And I absolutely adore that there are a couple of Resident Evil moments in here. I mean, I got Resident Evil vibes off of those moments. One where the old woman, Mrs. Adler, looks up. She's eating the body, and then she slowly looks up at Sarah. Like, basically our first look at the zombies in this show, which was pretty sick. And I'm like, this is our first look at the zombies, and the way they positioned her slowly looking up at Sarah, that's Resident Evil. If you've played the first Resident Evil game, or play the remake of the first Resident Evil game, that intro to the zombie in the game, the first one where he looks over his shoulder and he turns back and he looks at the player, that's almost like verbatim what happens in The Last of Us. She looks up and looks directly at Sarah very slowly. I'm like, that's Resident Evil. That's Resident Evil. And then, of course, the second moment that really reminded me of Resident Evil was when the police truck crashes into the pickup truck and it separates Joel and Sarah from Tommy. That is straight out of Resident Evil 2, man, when Leon and Claire get separated after the semi-truck hits their cop car. So, again, I just love how there was those little couple of moments that just stood out to me. I'm like, that's Resident Evil. That's just pure Resident Evil vibes, and I just absolutely love that. And here's the major thing. I should have probably said it before I got into the spoiler realm of things, but in terms of the casting, this cast of characters and how they portray these characters from the game, flawless. I know they don't look like the characters from the game, and don't get me wrong, that threw me off at first too, until I saw the trailer and I'm like, okay, Pedro Pascal sounds like Troy Baker as Joel. This is going to be awesome. And he sold me on Joel. I didn't see much of Bella Ramsey in the trailer. Maybe she was, little moments were there, but to me, so far, when I saw those first couple of trailers, she didn't sell me as Ellie. And I'm like, okay, I have to wait for the first episode. And now that the first episode's here, and I saw way more of Bella Ramsey as Ellie, my God, is she the perfect casting for this character. I mean, she sounds like Ellie. Her grunts, her aggression, her f bombs. When she throws f bombs down, I'm like, dude, that's basically Ashley Johnson voice acting right there. It sounds like the character from the game, and that was just super awesome to see. Or in this case, here, and I really think about it. All the actors for the main characters, Joel, Tommy, Tess, even Ellie. I mean, there's a moment where they all sound like their video game counterparts. And that is just, again, as a fan of the games, that just filled my heart with joy. It was just so sick to hear and to see play out. I mean, these actors, yes, they don't look like their video game counterparts, but my God, do they act the hell out of their video game counterparts. They really embody what makes these characters them. I'm so glad that the casting just blew me out of the water. I mean, everyone was just stellar. Again, they don't look like the characters from the game, but that's okay. That's okay, because these performances are so amazing that it just breaks any worries that I had. It just dulled out any worries I had. I'm super excited. I'm on board with this show, and the casting I think is just superb. I don't think you could have casted this show better. Maybe, but it would have been pretty hard to. And who they got is all perfect. For another video game accurate moment, I love the little part where Joel and Ellie are just killing time in the little room. A lot of that dialogue is straight out of the game. And again, a pattern that I see in this episode is we start off with an expansion scene, and then we go into something accurate from the game. And then we continue on to an expansion of that scene, and then we come back to and loop ourselves back around to the next video game accurate scene. It's just done so well. And another one of those moments is when Joel, Ellie, and Tess are trying to hide and sneak away from the Fireflies when they leave the wall. They're trying to get outside and get on the other side of the wall. I love that, because all that moment, them sneaking around, hiding behind the cars, the broken pieces of concrete, all straight out of the game. Everything again was straight out of the game, and it's just so cool to see, man. This is such a perfect video game adaptation. It's so far so good, man. I've never let's think of strong first episodes. I mean, Game of Thrones did have a strong first episode. House of the Dragon had a strong first episode. Sopranos has a great first episode. True Blood, if you ever seen True Blood and you like vampires and werewolves, True Blood has a great first episode. This The Last of Us, has a fantastic first episode. Like, it's up there, man. It's up there with great HBO originals, and I just pray and hope it keeps the quality throughout. I'm really curious to see how further plot lines play out from the game. I absolutely love how towards the end of this episode, when the Firefly soldier is holding up Joel, Ellie, and Tess at gunpoint, I absolutely love how they did a callback, a little flashback to Joel's daughter's death, Sarah's death from the beginning. The light shining in Joel's eyes reminded him of that moment, and it was in this moment that he acted. This is what he wished he would have done with Sarah, and I absolutely love that callback. And I don't think this callback was really in the games. In the games, this moment when they were being held up by the Firefly soldier, I believe in the games this was really to show more of Ellie's character, to show that she's a ruthless character. Like, she will attack, she will fight back, she's a survivor. And the reveal that she's been bitten. The bite was, I think, 3 months or 3 weeks old? I'm forgetting at the moment. But the bite mark is old, so that means she's immune. And that is the whole catapult to our story here. So in the games, that scene was really kind of centered around Ellie. But I love how in the show, they gave this scene not only to Ellie, but also to Joel as well. This is also the I would say the turning point almost. Like, this is what really pushes him forward as a survivor. I know 20 years has passed and he's probably done stuff in that 20 years, but for us as the audience, seeing him attack this Firefly soldier is the first moment where that's the Joel we know, and that's the Joel we play as in the game. He has become that Joel. And that was just such a cool way to end this episode, is with that moment. I absolutely love that they ended the episode with the last shot being something right out of the video games again, which is the two towers, the two skyscrapers leaning on each other. They look very decayed and very old and worn down, and it shows you that these characters are stepping into a world that is unlike ours, and that is a broken world, and it's a world where basically anything and everything dangerous can happen. There's more danger than just the infected, and I cannot wait to see where this show goes. I mean, as a fan of the games, of course you know where it's going to go, but to see how the show's going to play it out, that's what I'm excited for. That's what I'm really, really looking forward to see. And of course, the spectacular performances from our actors as well. And we don't see a lot of the actual infected like we do in the games. Like, we haven't seen really the clickers in this first episode yet, but next week they're gonna come, and once they do, oh man, shit's gonna hit the fan tenfold. So that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for reaching to the end of it. What did you think of The Last of Us first episode? If you've watched it, let me know your thoughts down below. Did you like it? Did you love it as much as I did? Let me know down below, and as always, please like, share, and subscribe, support the channel. It's always very much appreciated. The rendered image of the show I co-host my good friends Tyler and Shane. Link to the channel will be down below in the description. Go over all the latest movie news, updates, and trailers, so be sure to check that out. It's always a fun time. I do plan on having these little after shows and slash discussions. Not really discussions, I'm just really talking to the camera, so I'm just really giving you my first initial thoughts, my first reaction to the episode, and I wanted to keep it spoiler filled. I want to mention stuff that I find really cool without having to worry, spoiling people. So I'm going to give the spoiler warning at the top of the episode. I'm going to tell you if it's worth the watch, if not, right off the bat, so you don't have to really, watch forward to see if you need to watch it or not. I don't want you to get spoiled trying to figure out if you should watch this or not. So with that being said, I do plan to do this for every single episode until the season ends. Hopefully I can keep up with it. I'm pretty sure I can. Once every week. That should be a fun experiment to do for my channel. So be sure to tune in. Maybe this will go up Monday, Sunday night. I'm pretty sure it'll probably go up Monday, the following day after the episode premieres. So again, with all that being said, I hope you're all safe and well out there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.